biggest crisis in AFL football?
I'd be the first to admit that I'd taken my eyes off the ball. Probably won't delve in this too much because I don't think this is the segment for it, but I was struggling with depression at that stage and I had no idea I was. I was trying to be on the show with Bounce, Triple M. Back in the day, we were very risque. It was sort of the boys' club. It really was. You're either in or out, and we had that demeanour. But then when the Essendon thing got put on the front foot, I'm dealing with litigation. I'm dealing with a lot of coaches being accused of something they didn't do. Some sort of saying, what's going on? Like, I can remember, Sean Wellman, gee, what a great man. He got plastered with it. That turned him off football, unfortunately. He's a great fella, Sean. We really couldn't do a lot other than the welfare of all the coaches. And I remember getting criticised, and probably rightly so from a certain degree, from a couple of the stronger coaches at that stage. Horse and Clarko and Ross.
Guys you've had a lot to do with.
Yeah, they're all very supportive, but they couldn't understand why I was sort of walking around the town with Hurdy. One of our main criteria is to look after the welfare of all of our members. And my thought always in the back of my mind was let the people correct the behaviour, but we an association need to look after our members.
How hard was that walking the town with Hurdy when he was going through
that was difficult. There wasn't a lot of... It was basically just to see how he's going welfare-wise. And Parker and I spent a fair bit of time with him in his house, and that was difficult. And as I said, I wasn't equipped at all. And it was the AFL-CA was going through a review at that stage as well. Yeah. So, and I knew that where I had sort of been asleep at the wheel a few things, the marketing, the money, and all this. And the AFL-CA had to go to a whole new level, and I was in a position mentally to deal with any of that. But again, the stubbornness, I should have probably just walked away. But again, you think, and a lot of the leading scribes are saying, how can Danny act like that? He's conflicted, and I totally was. But I was a competitor, and I was going to move away from the association when everything settled. But it did my head in eventually, and it really did, unfortunately. And that wasn't an excuse. It was just that was something in my psyche that maybe the Richmond days, not playing a flag, all those things built up. And that was just the tipping point. If it wasn't that, it was going to be something else.
And was it the situation where you're covered a game at the MCG, you ring your wife Anita, not knowing how to get home, in a sense, in the car park?
And as I said, it was a byproduct of me probably just being on this treadmill of life, not smelling the roses, not trying to please everyone, probably other than myself, really. That's what it boiled down to. I had this sort of, I didn't have a chip on my shoulder. I was just, always wanted to be a premiership player, premiership coach, always wanted to be the number one in the media and wanted to do this and wanted to be a great administrator, but you couldn't do everything. Looking back, thank God the review came when it did, because it really did make me reflect, and I thought, I'm really battling here.
Did it save you, do you think, that the review and getting away from that?
And Clarko was great. And a lot of the coaches, they wanted the review because they could see how it was going. And he gave me some really good, honest feedback. And initially, again, I resented that. But, I owe it to him. And we've had a great discussion. And we're really good friends. He's a good country lad. But he wanted... And he was one of the guys with Horse that drove the Players Association when they were players.
When they started.
And he could see that my efforts in the media weren't being translated into the Coaches Association, and that was spot on. There was no doubting that, and you could just goes to show you can't be 10 things to 100 people.
So if you've been in your situation, and Hurdy, we know, with his a mental health issue, what does it say about the pressure of coaching and the scrutiny of it all?
Yeah, I think that we have to take a deep breath. We have to. And the association do a great job because there's some really good psychologists out there. I'm the first to admit when, I'm a bit of a sounding board for a few coaches who go through a scenario where they're not quite, if they're losing sleep, for God's sake, get out there and talk to someone about it. I never talked to anyone. I was stubborn. I didn't sleep for 3 weeks, and the result of that was I ended up with, basically, I did have a nervous breakdown because the lack of sleep basically did my head in. And out of that, I got major depression. But looking back, I probably had bits of depression all the way through. There was always a little bit of a chip on the shoulder, and it was probably looking back in the media, and it was no one's fault, but a few media people gave it to me on the way out as a coach. And when I was at Triple M, it was a chance for me to get back at it. But,
settling scores.
Yeah, but that was really childish.
Human nature in a sense.
Well, it was human nature, but become untenable with a lot of people. And I've probably destroyed a few friendships over it. I've sort of got over it because I knew that wasn't the person that I wanted to be. I was at that stage. I don't take any of the comments back at that particular time, but. And if I could take them back, I would, but I can't.
You talked about not getting any sleep, and it's not a little bit of sleep, but not a wink of sleep in a night. What does that do to the way you feel?
Well, you look at I was manic to get over it. I just thought it was going to be like a broken arm. It took me sort of 3 or 4 years to come out, and I think you've always got sort of bits and pieces of it now, but I'm well aware of when I do too much. So what the lack of sleep does to you, basically, it nearly turned you insane. Yeah, because through those Richmond years, I never lost a wink of sleep.
Yeah.
Not a wink.
No, but maybe you're subconsciously putting it to a side and it comes out later on.
Exactly right. And I think you get a bit older. And I think, men out there have to be a hell of a lot more. Because back in the day, and even stoic, farm boy,
yep.
7 generations from Ireland, if you've got an issue, grab a tissue. If you've got an ailment, work it off. If you have a big one on the squirt, get up an hour early and work it off, and that was the DNA. Manning up in the past was to suffer in silence. Manning up now is to put your hand up. And as I said, I got no issue talking about mental health, what I went through, because I hope I help a lot of people in that.
And how many people have come up to you and said, Danny, what you've said has allowed me to help myself?
Yeah, and I think the advice I give to everyone out there is it's not like a broken arm where you put your hand in plaster. The doctor goes, right, that'll be in plaster for 4 weeks, then you can do some light weights, then you can do some range of movement, and then you'll be able to play again. Mental health, there's all different, and that's where it's pretty difficult. But it's great that people come up, but the main advice I'd say, speak to someone close to you and go and see a doctor. It's as simple as that.
Exactly. And we're seeing more and more footballers today, the stresses of being involved in AFL football with social media and the pressure on them. Have you spoken to some of those guys who've taken time away from the game to deal with their mental health?
Look, I have. I don't openly go and put myself out there. Wayne Swash does an outstanding job. I've had a fair bit to do with Dan Hunt up in New South Wales. He's got the mental health movement, so I'm helping him out a bit with his passion. And, it's something that I think, because we were talking about it off air, we in the 80s and 90s, I think that was the sweet spot for really good footy and enjoying yourself. It really was. That was the sweetest spot because we were getting well paid relatively to society. We still had a job and we still had a bloody lot of fun for whatever reason. And it's right. There's a lot of money involved in the game now. There wasn't much back in the day. There's a lot of money. Players are getting well paid. There's a lot more scrutiny because of the media rights. There was no Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, probably a good thing in those days. So there's a lot more different pressures on the players. I think they're probably about not about the same. The amount of money we were getting to our output, to the enjoyment we had, compared to the amount of money they're getting, to the scrutiny, the pressures, the mental fatigue, the player having a wine on a Thursday night, getting photoed. Oh, God, what's going on here? The balance, I think, at the moment is an interesting one. And I think the thing I struggle with is players are getting more time off, and I totally get that because you can't expect them to be there all the time. You don't want to turn it into a clinic where they're just clocking on, clocking off at a footy club, and that's a challenge for any coach or any player or any club out there right now, is to get the total enjoyment out of it. The amount of time they get off, the question I would ask is what are they doing with that time off?
Does that worry
what's your
you?
passion? It does worry me. It worries me a lot. I love the fact that Paddy Dangerfield loves his fishing. Who else is out there that's got passions? Some guys are just naturals in the media. Not everyone's going to be in the media. Some guys want to be, Stewie Lowe and Max Hutchison, really successful builders. They were going to do that from the get-go. So what's your passion that's actually going to provide some income for you and your family when you retire? And the Players Association do such a good job, and I know they're all aware of it. I've had a bit to do with Tony Brown at St Kilda. We've got We've got a player down there at the moment, Jack Stevens, going through some hardship. A hell of a lot more equipped, but the question I always ask, if they're getting the extra 13, 14, 15, 16 weeks, whatever it is, 3 weeks over Christmas, what are they actually doing? What are they doing with that time? Because my time was simple. You know, I was lucky the last 6 years I worked at the AFL with Gary Lyon and Gavin Brown. Work might be a pretty loose word for what we did.
Somewhere to go at least.
We had somewhere to go.
At that stage. Or Atari at that stage.
We used to travel.
School
Country
clinics were
Victoria
outstanding from memory.
Unbelievable. We had some fun. But anyway.
You had some good car trips.
We had a lot of good car trips.
Because you also had the car trips with Plugger up and down the highway.
Yeah, well, in
as well.
summer. We didn't have a lot to do in summer. You know,